Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next episode of Meet the Agile Academy Ambassador. Today, I'm hosting Holger Nils Pohl, a dear friend and collaborator. And Holger and I met, I think, 12, 13, maybe even 14 years ago when we were delivering workshops at the same time. I had a break in my workshop. I go around the corner, see what kind of fantastic visuals he's creating, jump into his workshop and just ask, can you help me learn the stuff that you're doing? So Holger, I'm super happy that you didn't kick me out and that it turned out for us to become friends and collaborators. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to be talking to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sohrab. Yeah, I think actually it started with an interruption, which was a great way to start a relationship. So,
but you must have thought, which idiot just jumps into my workshop?
What are you doing here?
What is he doing here? So, Holger, as I mentioned, great to have you with us. You and I have been working together now for many years. I think for two reasons. One is we like each other. The other is, hopefully we like each other.
Yes,
the other is, I think our skills are very compatible.
Yeah.
And we complete each other to some extent, right?
Mm.
So I'm a bit more on the analytics side. You're a bit more on the creative side.
Mm-hmm.
We both have a passion for visualization, but you do it way better than I can do it. I conceptualize things. And we're also in topics that are very complementary. So I come primarily from the Scrum world. You come more from the design thinking world. And obviously, those two things are not the same thing, but they really do go hand in hand. So as I asked all of the other ambassadors with whom I ran interviews before is, where did your quote unquote agile journey start? Because probably before you and I met, you didn't have a lot of like intersections with the term agility, but you were doing a lot of those things already. So walk me through the early years of your career that then later turned out to be the Holger that we see today.
Yeah, I think actually we could look back to my university days, because my agile way of working already started there, because I started studying architecture because I thought that would be the way to go. And I learned it's not the way to go. So I had my first pivot in my life, stopping the studies at the university and becoming a carpenter. So that was like a huge pivot in my life already. And after becoming a carpenter, I thought that's not enough. So I took another step, like an iteration of the development, and became a communication designer. And I think with that thinking of nothing is set in stone, even if you think you go to the university, you have to finish it. I mean, that's what people do. I stopped there. And I think that was kind of the ignition of, okay, we can change things even if we think they should be done in a certain way. And very early on, as a communication designer, I tried to connect to people. And I learned to know somebody who's called Miko. He had like a product and didn't know what to do with it, like electrostatic foils. And I helped him like go to market with those foils, figuring out what could we do with this. And they became the first steadies, which are like electrostatic sticky notes, super cool. And while I was helping him go to market, he learned to know Alexander Osterwalder. So Alex is the creator of the business model canvas and multiple other visual tools that companies, like millions of people, are using around the world. And as he learned to know Alex, I said, I want to work with Alex as a graphic recorder, because I was like visually recording workshops at that time. And I got the introduction. I did the first visual recording, and it was like with you, actually, it just like we just fit. Like with Alex, it's just a fit. Like the thinking fits, the personality, we like each other. So I did hundreds of masterclasses with Alex over the time of the years. I think until today, I am like one of the 3 people who participated in the most masterclasses and workshops about business modeling in the world. And we became close friends, and I learned the methodology of like creative thinking, of thinking through things, conceptualizing, creating visual tools, and build that into my habit of working. And I think that was kind of my start of agile, even though it was not called agile, but applying design thinking, which is, I mean, in its core, design thinking is agile as well, right? If we have a broader sense of agile. And yeah, during that time, you and I met. I took a training as a Scrum Master, right? I joined the training, became a certified Scrum Master, and the rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah. So let's go into carpenting.
Yes.
That was your first real profession, right? Because
Yeah.
I think architecture after one semester you dropped
Yeah.
out.
I think I managed 3, but that's
Or
kind of
three, yeah.
not notable. Not
So
notable.
very early on, right? You dropped out and then you
Yeah.
become a carpenter. Now, when you think about what you know of agility today,
Mm.
how would you connect that to the work of a carpenter?
So, what a lot of people might not know about carpentry is that it is a job where you have to think through things all the time. So basically, what you do as a carpenter is problem solving all the time. Because when you try to build furniture, and you try to fit it into a niche, like in a house of a client, what happens all the time is that something doesn't work as you planned, right? You go there, you measure everything, you have the perfect sizes, you build the stuff, you build it up in the workshop, and then you bring it to the client, and all of a sudden they're like missing 5 centimeters or something. It's always happening, or something is not like straight, or whatever happens. So it's all of the time trying to solve puzzles, and how can we fix this? How can we do this? How could we build it in the best way so it's most mobile? All those kind of things. So basically, it's a lot about like trying to build something, sometimes trying out small things and saying, okay, this doesn't work. Like we need to use another glue, we need another screw, whatever it is. And so it is pretty agile in terms of like problem solving all the time. Um, and then I think with carpentry, especially, it's really about the details, making things perfect until it's good enough. But in carpentry, good enough is 100%. You know, it's really sharp 100%, which is then different to the agile that we know in businesses where we say like 80% might be good enough, in most cases. But it helped me to have that view for as well what perfection looks like. And if you have your hands on a perfect piece of furniture with like lack on it and it's like it's just perfect, you feel that sense of something can be perfect and you can spend the extra time to do it, but it's not necessary all the time.
Mhm. And you also have that sense of you have done this work,
Oh yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get something done and you get it done in the right way, then you're incredibly proud of yourself. So
Yeah.
my first job, I was much younger. Maybe you had earlier jobs before that. So when I was a kid, I really loved this Panini stickers,
Oh yeah.
especially when there was like football European championships or World Cups.
Mm-hmm.
And each pack of 6 was 50 Pfennige back then. So
Yes.
about 50 cents today, more or
Yeah.
less. And but my dad told me, he's like, you get 50 cents every day as your pocket money. You can spend it on that, or you can spend it on, I don't know, chocolate or whatever, right? But I wanted to have more money. So he said, you can clean my shoes if you want to earn more money. So I was 6, maybe 7 years old, and I learned to clean the shoes. And he was constantly like critiquing, no, it's not really clean, it's not
Mm-hmm.
shiny. And
Mm-hmm.
then I figure out like how to use these tools to like really get the shoes perfect, like really perfect. And every pair of shoes would take me like 15 minutes. And then, so within 1 hour, I would do 4 pair of shoes. And that would be then 4 times 50 Pfennige. So 2 Deutsche Marks. And there would be like 4 packs of Panini stickers.
Ah.
But I still remember that feeling when you do that last polishing of that
Mm-hmm.
shoe, right? And how that feels, right? That accomplishment. And that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But now back to your story, right? The carpentry. I think there's another aspect in carpentry, and you briefly mentioned it, but I want to deep dive a bit more on that, because that's also one of those areas where you are particularly strong. Is you're not building this product, that piece of furniture, based on your assumptions.
Mm-mm.
You're closely collaborating with your customer. You need to have a deep sense and understanding of that customer and the environment in which that customer wants to put the furniture. So when we say to our product owners, you need to get out of the building, I assume for every carpenter, that's just habit, right?
Yeah.
You would never build a piece of furniture without having been out of your workshop, out of your building first, and without having met the customer where they are in their context. Walk me a bit through like how that was back in the day, and to some extent you still use that experience on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think I can explain it even with something that's more recent, because last year I built a piece of furniture for a church, like an icon. And that was, again, the same process as every time, basically. So what you do first is, of course, meet the customer. So you have a call with the customer, and then they say, this is what I imagine. I say, okay, that sounds great. Could I come to you so you show me? So in showing, as we know, right, show, don't talk, or show, don't tell, is really important, because you want to see what's happening. You want to see where it's fitting in. You want to see what people are thinking, what they're talking about. So what you do is you go to the customer, in this case, the church, right, with the priest. And he said, like, this is the icon I want to have like a furniture for. And this is the place where I imagine it being. And then what you do is you analyze what are other materials in the room. What kind of wood could fit to those other, to the chairs, to the walls? Like there was like wood of oak, and then like what could fit here? And then what kind of style do we have? So all those of questions before you even make like a sketch of what you want to create. So what you do is you analyze first, speak to the customer, then you go back to your workshop or to your office, and you make a sketch. Like you say, this is the concept, right? This is what I want to do. And with that, you go back to the customer and then say, look, this is the piece of furniture I'm imagining, and we could place it here in this kind of material. You bring probes of material, right, that they can see like
Early tests.
early tests, like what kind of material would be possible, and then say this. They do like corrections and feedback. Go back. That might take like 2-3 feedback loops before you even specifically plan how to build it. Right? You don't know until then how to build it. And then you go into that phase of like, how do we build it? And we order materials, and then we start building it. Then before it's finished, like with the raw piece, you go back again to the customer and you place it in the place where you want to place it, just to see, is it really working? Because at that stage, it's not finished. If something is really wrong, at least it doesn't cost the whole thing to redo. And then you say, okay, that kind of fits and we know how to place it. You take it back to the workshop and you finish the piece and you bring it in and you make it perfect, and then everybody's happy. And that's basically, you could exchange everything what I said now with a business challenge,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Good products are the result of co-creation between a customer and the team or the individual that is building that product. And I think too often when I specifically look at the clients that you and I get to work with, they never, or almost never, have that customer interaction, that really close collaboration, and then that deep understanding of what the true customer needs are. So moving from carpentry, right? You study communication design. You start working with Alex. You mentioned Alex being famous for the business model canvas, but there's also the value proposition canvas, which has a whole piece around understanding the customer so much better, including the Clayton Christensen concept of jobs to be done, and then the pains and the gains, and then connecting all of those things together before you even go out and build something. So how did working with Alex and Strategizer as a group shape your thinking and deepen your understanding of the importance of these topics?
So first of all, I think it was just a lucky accident to meet him, because he's one of the most influential thinkers out there, I think. And he's really able to stretch your own thinking as well. I mean, you know him as well very, very well, right? So he's really stretching it. As well as his co-author, Yves Pigneur, who is like an even stronger conceptual thinker. Like just surprisingly strong conceptual thinker.
Mastermind.
Yeah, it's a mastermind. And having these people as mentors and friends, I think helped me grow exponentially, I must say. As well as the connection to all the other strategizer coaches who are like super experienced, like Paris Thomas, Greg Bernada, like Christian Doll, like a lot of people who have huge experience in that field of strategic thinking, business model design, innovation. And that helped me build a community of high professionals and high performing professionals, as well as doing a lot of workshops with them for the big corporations of the world, around the world, teach me like what do you have to look for? What are the pitfalls? Why do people hesitate, like not working in that way? How can you bring managers, executives to work with visual tools and think things through and go out to the customer and test things and becoming more agile and implement more design thinking? As well as I met Christian Rangen, who is like a leading thinker in strategic tools as well. And we did a lot of work in Malaysia and other Asian countries as well on this topic. And I think that was the biggest point in my journey of becoming who I am right now, becoming so experienced, because I had the chance to work with all these leading thinkers in the workshops and surprising clients what we do. Because I mean, you know how difficult it is to explain people what it means to work with us, because they never experienced something like this.
Yeah.
And it's I even can't explain it right here. So it's that experience of being on site with us and having all the visual tools planned out, having like a run sheet down to the minute, right? Having exercise that you never done before, speaking to customers within workshops, like inviting customers to the workshops that you normally would do internally for a year or two. But no, in the very first workshop, you have actually key stakeholders in there to get their feedback and pitch to them and all those kind of things. Made the journey exciting, challenging, but as well helped me grow a lot as a facilitator.
No, I fully agree. I fully agree. When I was younger, one of my friends told me, "Tell me who you know, and I tell you who you are." I'm like, "Come on, man, just forget about that shit." But then, right, the moment you start spending your time with certain people, they have tremendous influence on your growth, on your trajectory. So I can fully relate to what you were saying. Now, people like Alex and others that you mentioned, similar to you and I, we constantly try to emphasize this topic of, hey, before you build anything, you need to get a deep sense of your customer. Why do you think, having worked with so many companies, is it so hard for organizations to take that simple, quote unquote, step to always start with the customer and then work backwards to the technology, using that old Steve Jobs quote, right? Yeah. Why is it so difficult?
I think there are multiple arguments for not doing it. They can all be counter-argued, of course. But so the single most thing that I heard was we can't do it because of the NDAs. So it would be like we can't share something. It's too early. We have a patent. If somebody knows of it, like the danger of like exploit, like showing something that we have as to the world. And that argument can be counter-argued by, it's fine to just invite one customer who's signing an NDA, who you know well already, who you trust, and just have an interview. Because when we hear, like when people here go out to the customer, they think of online testing, building websites, MVPs, prototypes, going out in the world and telling like 1,000 people about what you do and trying to figure out what they want, which is not the case, right? That's a misunderstanding of the technique. What you want to do is speak to one customer first. If you never talk to a customer in that phase, just take one. It's already 100% growth of your like 100% more
definite growth mathematically.
Yeah. So just take one customer and that problem is basically done. Yeah. And don't be too fancy, right? So the other thing is that they fear to disappoint customers, right? They fear in an early stage, we're just thinking about something. If we get the customer in now, they might expect us to build exactly this crazy whatever it is we talking about, and perhaps we can't deliver. And then our brand is broken and the customer will leave us and never buy from us again. But actually, it's the opposite. Yeah. So if people are invited to a co-creation session, they are proud, right? They think like, wow, they want to have my opinion. Like, who am I to this company? You know,
I truly matter.
Yeah, I truly matter. you build a relationship to that customer, and you can frame the session in a way that there is no misunderstanding, there is no disappointment, because you say, look, this is early stage. We're in that phase of prototyping. We're trying to figure out what could help you in the best way. And whatever we say today might never happen because it's an exploration, right? It will lead to something perhaps completely different. So please bear with us and come with us on the journey, and always be honest and truthful. And then you will have like friends forever, but they are your customers. So you can use that as a relationship building exercise. That will be the second thing. And the third thing is that they say, look, it's too costly. We can't all like, if we do this, like getting them in and doing like all the paperwork, and you know how long it takes us and stuff, it's always just a weak argument, right? Because what you lose in terms of money when you don't invite the customer early is way more in terms of money and time and resources and all that than having them early on in, right? Because you developing a product for a year, 5 years, 10 years, depending on your industry, and then nobody wants to buy it, that's a huge loss compared to spending like 6 weeks on regulatories to invite a customer to a workshop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So to your last point, the one analogy I always provide, especially to people that have a deep understanding of manufacturing, I ask them, what is the cost of identifying a bug or a mistake in manufacturing the further you're away from the point where that mistake happened?
True.
And they know it's exponential, or it always grows by an order of magnitude, basically,
Yeah.
right? And then I say it's the same thing with customers, right? If you don't speak to your customers, you run into the risk of building something, even if you build it really well, that nobody wants. The later you find out, the more costly it is. Now, Jeff Bezos phrases this differently, saying if you're an inch apart on the vision, you'll end up miles apart on the product, which is basically that same thing, right? So there is really like that argument, it is too costly to speak to our customers at any point in time, not only at the beginning, at any point in time. Like discovery is a continuous process, is just one of those weakest arguments. And I think people need to wrap their hand around this and appreciate it. So now, one of the pieces of work that I see you doing a lot is not only raising the awareness for it, that's one aspect, but then it's also about teaching them how to actually do it. What are some of the better, I try to avoid the term best, right? What are some of the better ways that you have found in early on engaging customers and getting a deeper sense, a deeper understanding of what is it that they truly need?
And you mean what a company could do to engage their customers?
Exactly. What kind of techniques could they use?
Yeah. So I think the very first one is just inviting them for an interview. That's the simplest way to do. A lot of people say, yeah, interviews are lame, but actually it's one of the most used techniques. And if you do them right, that's completely fine. Because interviews can be shaped as having a coffee together and some predefined questions that you ask the customer. And if you ask questions for evidence in terms of when do you do something, how often do you do it, like when you are in this situation, what happens, those kind of questions, not asking for would you like this and this product, but just discovering their life and understanding what they do, then you learn a ton. And that's the easiest thing to do, right? Second thing would be that you design small prototypes of concepts. So perhaps you have a piece of paper with you and you sketch something down in terms of like, for this and this problem, I thought about that and that solution. And you quickly sketch it out on a napkin or a piece of paper, again, during a meeting, and see what they say. And they start naturally working with you together on that piece of paper. If you can't draw, that doesn't matter. You just write something, draw some arrows and stuff, do a mind map thing, right? So don't draw. It's just putting something on paper. But bringing something out of your head onto a surface really helps in a conversation as well to get very specific feedback, and people enjoy that, right? Make it informal, not too formal, right? Don't like the first step should never be invite them to a huge workshop, but having a one-on-one meeting. Do the meetings if you can on site, right? Just meet in person, right? I know nowadays it might be sometimes a bit tricky, but if possible, meet together as real people. That really helps in nowadays times to build the relationship. So this would be the very first steps to say, how could we do this early on? And then the most important thing is when it's really early on, you ask for problems, right? You don't ask for solutions. And that as well counter argues the argument of like they could steal ideas and you could leak something that's under an NDA, because what you want to figure out in the beginning is what kind of problems do your customer have, right? Do they struggle with something? Like, of course, in the field of your product and service that you have, but is there something that they really struggle with? And you want to figure out that, because, I mean, you know that from your practice as well. What happens in most companies is they love an idea and they start developing that idea further, but they might not solve the right problem, right? They have identified a problem very quickly and say, okay, this is a problem we need to solve. Now we find solution for it, because solution finding is the rewarding work, because now at the end we see, okay, we found a solution. But basically what you want to search for is the right problems to solve, because if you solve the wrong problem, I mean, who cares? And that would be the starting point. Always ask people, what's your problem? And you know what's about people and human people in general is we love to talk about the problems we have. So it's a great conversation starter.
Especially in Germany.
Especially.
So every German becomes a great opportunity for a customer interviews.
Absolutely. It's a perfect introduction. Hey, how are you? What's your problem today? And you have like an hour-long conversation.
Hour-long conversation. You just go to the next bakery. So, Holger, as part of your journey, you not only worked with people like Alex who have created great tools and then put them into nice books, etc. You've also written a bunch of books yourself. Your latest book, I think your latest book is Creating Clarity. I can never keep up because you just produce in such a fast pace, right? I know after that you wrote one about neurodiversity, etc., like a story for kids. But let's put that one aside. Not that it's not important, but for the sake of this conversation, focus on Creating Clarity. One of the key concepts there, if I'm not mistaken, is understand, create, and share. And while you were speaking about, right, you start talking to a customer. That's the understand piece, right?
Yeah.
Walk me a bit more through that cycle. And for you, it's consciously a cycle, because it's not you understand at one point and then you create and then you share, but it's a continuum, right?
Yeah.
So walk me through that thing, which is at the core, the way I understand of how you work with your customers as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. By the way, it's 12 books by now. So talking today, it's 12 books. So it might be hard to get all of them. So Creating Clarity. So the Clarity framework, the basic idea is, I mean, we have a lot of frameworks out there, right? We have the Scrum framework, we have design thinking, we have like all the other tools like Six Sigma, whatever we have. Like there are a lot of frameworks and concepts out there. So the question was, why should I develop another one? But I was searching for the core of all of them. And the core of all of them is that in Agile, in design thinking, right, in business model innovation, you have the cycles, right? The iteration of repeating the things again and again to find perfection or find the good enough, depending on where you stand on that constellation. And at the core of everything, it always starts with understanding the problem or the challenge or the project or the idea. Mm-hmm. If you don't understand what you're doing, you can't create something of value. So we spend a lot of time and understand and figure out, what are we here to do? Is it to create ideas? Is it to solve a problem? Which kind of problem? Is it to answer a question? Which kind of question? Those kind of, like, we just spend time and understand. Then once we understood what we want to do, we go to create. We develop a lot of ideas. We focus down, hopefully, on one idea, which is the most painful thing to do for most people. You know those people who have a lot of fun in brainstorming, and then you say, okay, let's choose the most promising ideas, and it's like, okay, could we have a break? Like, could we stop the workshop? Like, so focusing down, and then building a prototype, making it tangible somehow. What you did could be a concept, could be a PowerPoint presentation that is visually designed in a proper way. It could be just like a role play. It could be anything. It could be a piece of paper. And then you go to share, because why would you create something if you're not sharing it? In the sharing phase, it's all about getting feedback. So you have a new level of understanding. And there we go with the cycle again, right? So then we're back to understanding and create something new. Perhaps it's smaller, just an iteration, share that again. And we go through that cycle again and again, no matter what you do. If you do Scrum, if you do design thinking, business model, I don't care. This is always the same. And it's actually the same, or should be the same, in meetings and workshops too. But like, if you imagine a meeting, and how do many people start? They start right with the topic and they jump into it. But how it should start is understand why we're here. What are we doing? What's the technique we're using? How do we continue? Then people create something. They make decisions, they create ideas, they refine something. What do they do afterwards in a meeting? They should share it, because sharing is the only way to align. Share what you have done, align on what you have done, create a new understanding as a group, and then you can either leave the meeting or continue that cycle again, right? And that's the clarity framework.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It really is at the core of all of those frameworks, tools, and techniques that we use. Now, you already made the segue into meetings. I know this is also one of those areas that you are really passionate about, and I consciously use that term because it frustrates you and meetings are not efficient.
Yeah.
And you earlier also mentioned when you create a workshop, it's like really like to the minute you have the script in your head. This is where you and I differ a lot.
Yeah.
Because I just need to like put away that spreadsheet. I just need a general understanding. What do we want to achieve?
Yeah.
And then, but we both succeed in the ways that we do things. But with meetings, you are very meticulous. Now, walk me through why do you have that passion for meeting mastery? And then B, how does a great meeting look to you?
Right. So the passion comes from that you, our customers, our clients, everybody is having so many meetings all the time, because most of the time we need somebody else to think things through, or to decide, or to bring something forward, to create alignment or commitment. It's all happening in meetings, and there's no way around it. So sometimes we thought of like, okay, let's reduce meetings by 90%, right? But that's not the way it works. We are like human beings. We need to connect. We need to talk to each other, and therefore develop ideas, sometimes against each other or with each other. But we need somebody else to talk to, right? That's why so many people nowadays talk to AI. They need to talk to somebody, right? But we can't get around having no meetings. That's not possible. So we have a lot of meetings, and most meetings that I join that I'm not the facilitator or that I'm not the lead of are really bad. People are frustrated, and I am frustrated too. And when I talk to clients, I try to talk to them about business modeling. What do they ask me? How could we have better meetings? I talk to them about strategy, and what do they ask me? So how do I do that in the next meeting? How can I introduce this? And how can I get people to work on it? You do like Scrum and leadership, like agile leadership, and help people to becoming catalysts. And what do they ask you? Yeah, but how could I do that in the next meeting? You know? They all struggle with that, and they feel like it's a waste of time. They start multitasking. They try to listen to a meeting. Sometimes people have two meetings at the same time. They're writing emails at the side. And it's becoming so inefficient. People burn out, and you don't come, like, the most crucial thing about that is you don't get to the depth. You know, it's all on a shallow, high level now. And it's like, it feels okay, but it's really not deep, right? And I would like to get to that level again, that people do the deep work and have good conversations and become high performing teams, you know? And I think that's the core to that, is how we have meetings. And you asked for how a great meeting would look like. So the first off, before the meeting, it should be clear who's actually needed in that meeting, because you know, all those meetings where like we have 30 people and actually only 4 people are necessary for that meeting. The rest is just listening in for whatever sake. They say it's important, but it's actually not. So who should be in the meeting? That should be clearly defined, and everybody should be able to push back as well to say, look, I think I'm not needed in this meeting. I will not join. Second thing is, have a clear agenda in terms of either saying what's the meeting about or how is the meeting structured, and decline every meeting that has no agenda, or at least like no clear topic and you know what's the action of it. So that will be the two things that happen before a meeting. And then during a meeting, it should be very clear who's leading the meeting, and everybody should adhere to that person. I know of so many meetings where you have a technical meeting lead and nobody cares, right? They take over, they ignore what they say, they don't hold the timings. So you need a lead who's like, and the lead needs to be accepted with clear timings, with a clear plan, what's happening, and then really following that plan. That would be the thing. And within a meeting, of course, you need the right culture in terms of you really listen to what other people say. If you have given 3 minutes talking time, you stick to the 3 minutes and you don't talk for 10 minutes. You don't repeat everything that somebody else said because you just want to say it in other words. So those kind of things are important. But then I think, and you know what's coming, the most important thing for me is use visual tools. Because we have so many talking heads. I mean, in this interview, we are 2 talking heads as well, but it's an interview. It's a different kind of format, right? But in a meeting, you want to do or create an output, because otherwise you wouldn't meet. And that output needs somehow to be captured. And it's the best way to use templates, a virtual whiteboard, just sticky notes somewhere, but have something where people can externalize their thoughts. And here's a small tip for like virtual meetings, because yesterday I had just had another training on virtual meetings, is if you have like 9 people in a virtual meeting and you want to get their opinions, never ask them on like verbally. Always ask them the question and say, write it down on that and that whiteboard. Don't talk about it. Everybody's just writing down their opinions. And then you continue to do the next step, because you can like do that afterwards, checking the opinions, what's kind of aligned and misaligned, but don't like let everybody talk about their opinion. That takes like 2 hours with 9 people. Makes no sense, right? So write something down, make it tangible. I think that's the most important thing in meetings as well.
Now, you mentioned that specifically around virtual meetings. Would that also apply to in-person meetings?
Oh, yes.
The example that you just provided? Yeah, sorry.
Let's say with the opinions, I think some things you can discuss better in on-site meetings, really discuss, because you have more body language available. You know, when somebody is at an end, you can work with eye contact. You can like work with all those things. So speaking is easier in on-site meetings than in virtual meetings. But in general, saying keep those things in mind, definitely in on-site meetings as well.
Yeah. Now, talking about virtual versus on-site, there's a huge debate. I mean, 2020, it was clear due to safety reasons, everybody go virtual.
Yes.
Now, people got accustomed to it, right? A lot of organizations built an infrastructure for that.
Yeah.
Now we see more and more organizations are moving their people or asking their people to come back to the office. From 1 day to 2 day, and then on the very extreme side, companies like Amazon, JP Morgan say demanding 5 days a week.
Yeah.
What is your perspective on that? Where do you see benefits of being in person, or and downsides basically of being virtual?
Let me start with the positive things about virtual is that you don't have to travel across the world, right? If you have an international company and people are sitting in the US and Europe and Asia, so much better to have virtual meetings, right? How many plane flights are saved by now? It's amazing, right? I think that's a good thing. And we should avoid traveling for 2 or 3 days around the globe just for a meeting. I think that's a given for me. If you want to develop something together, like work on a problem to solve, work on ideas to find, deep dive, right? Creating deep dives. I think those are the things where you want to meet on site, because you want to feel the energy, you want to move in a room, right? The movement in a room is very important. In meetings that you and I do, we seldomly sit, right? We encourage people to stand up, to move around, to work on the wall. Like the wall is a new desk, right? You have tools on the wall, you work there, you have always focused discussions on specific questions, and you use the whole room to guide conversations. So for those things, meet on site, right? If it is like a town hall presentation, if it is a short information session, if it is a pre-aligned decision-making session, do them virtually, all fine, right? In the moment that you need to in-depth discuss something, meet on site, right? Because virtual discussions just don't work. Why do they not work? You have everything right in your ear, right? It's super loud when somebody's speaking. There's no way to avoid it. There's no way to build proper eye contact to say who's talking next to something. There's no way to read body language. There's even the awkward feeling of everybody's in the room, but they're not, because literally they are in the screen. So many things that prohibit good conversations in virtual meetings. But presentation focused, decision focused, that can be all done very easily in virtual meetings.
I fully agree. I think one of the aspects where in-person work becomes important are all of the things where connection is needed.
Yes.
And by connection, I don't mean internet connectivity. I mean human to human connection, right?
Yes.
So if you have a longer meeting, if you have a workshop like we sometimes do, and I mean, in our workshops, it's not debating certain decisions, right? We're teaching stuff. But if sometimes we run workshops, like strategy workshops, where they actually have to make important decisions.
Yeah.
And then so much happens during the breaks, right? People that were like on opposing ends of a discussion, suddenly they are close to each other, they're drinking their coffee. Sometimes they put a like hand around each other's shoulders, right? And that connection then allows them to have a completely different conversation after the break. And whenever you run virtual sessions, not you necessarily, but all of us, right?
Yeah.
That connection is gone, right? You don't have your shared coffee. You don't have your shared meal. You're not able to do that eye contact, as you mentioned, or like briefly put your hand on someone else's shoulder, right? And I think that's, we tend to forget about the importance of that relationship building as well, to ultimately come together as a senior leadership team or as a product team that needs to have shared commitments. And those shared commitments, I think, are a result of a deep connection to each other. So, as usual, right, you have to find the right context for each of these to happen.
Yes.
Now, Holger, with regards to time, we also time box this interview. I want to close with a question to you. Like, what do you spend your time on right now mostly? What are you deeply passionate about? We talked about meeting mastery a few minutes ago. And how does, as a part of that, your ideal client engagement look like?
Okay. So yeah, we talked about the meeting mastery. I'm also deeply entrenched in design thinking currently because we're building like a new course, right, together. And as well, I'm working with the professor at the Cologne University on the topic of cognitive biases and how they influence our decision making, how we can help leaders to make unbiased decision, or at least mitigate some of the biases that we have. So it all kind of comes together in terms of the topic of how do we work together? How do we optimize or have great meetings in the sense of making strategic decisions, looking forward, planning the future, right? And really making us future proof. And my ideal client, that's a good question, because what I like with clients is if they are really engaged. So they should be pre-engaged in the topics I'm talking to. They should see the need for having a better meeting culture. They should see the need for driving their company further while they operate on the existing model. So what we always say is having that idea of the ambidextrous business model, to say we have an existing business model that's somehow working. It might be good or not so good depending on your company right now. And then we need to develop at the same time an innovative new model. And that is both an operating model, the culture, and the business model. And if you are like somebody who has this knowledge already, or at least that feeling for we need to do both at the same time, then you would be my perfect customer.
I think that's a great way to end this interview. Holger, as usual, it was a pleasure. I mean, you and I, we basically speak more or less on a daily, sometimes weekly basis. I enjoyed it. I learned a few more things about you. In the past, we had not, or at least I had not made that connection between carpentry and getting out of the building. So I love the fact that I finally got to do this after 12, 15 years of however long we've known each other. So thanks for taking the time, and thanks for being such an important contributor to our Agile Academy Ambassadors community. Also with the programs that you're developing, not just the course programs, so that others can also teach those things. And yeah, love to have you around. Thanks.
Thank you for having me, Sohrab.